What's up, y'all? It's Zach with Living Corporate, and wow, it's almost April, y'all. What is going on? What is going on with these months? It's out of control out here. I record this so excited about who I'm bringing to y'all today. Andrew or Drew McCaskill is a dynamic speaker, thought leader, brand professional, and his skin looks phenomenal. I mean, honestly, I thought he was like 30 something or 20, late 20s. And man came out talking about I'm 40, whatever. I was like, come on, man, y'all drink your water. A lot of y'all really drink your water, mind your business. Your skin will thank you for it straight up. All of that being said, I'm so thankful for Andrew, because not only is he coming to this conversation with a wealth of experience, but it's his voice, which goes into this whole point around personal brand and the discussion that we had. Now, we've talked about personal brand and stuff in the past, but I think now more than ever, as you look at like our economic and recessionary fears, as you think about the state of Black employees at work, as you think about like where we are technologically and the tools that we have to really extend and expand and amplify our voices. Now is a more important time than ever to be strategic in how you show up, when you show up, and being clear on why you're showing up, wherever you're showing up, right? And I'm just so thankful that we're able to get Drew to do that. So shout out to Drew. Shout out to LinkedIn, who Living Corporate is a partner with as a LinkedIn learner. Make sure you click the link in the show notes to learn more about LinkedIn and more about the work that we are doing and the learning content that we have provided as a vendor with LinkedIn Learning. With all that being said, we're gonna pay some bills, right? That's what people say, right? That's what people say. We're gonna pay some bills. We got some ads, so we're gonna pay some bills, and then I will be back to you. All right, see you soon. Andrew, welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey, man, look, it's been a minute, but we kind of met already informally through CBS This Morning. You remember that?
I remember that. Listen, I think we both were saying, ended our conversation with, thank you, Gail.
Man, it was so wild. I remember looking up and I was like, and then anyway, that was just a very interesting season. In fact, we're going to talk about seasons a little bit here in a minute, but
sure.
Let's go ahead.
No, I was going to say for sure. I mean, like that was probably my first month at LinkedIn, when I did CBS Morning Show, right? And talking about our new data and our new insights. And it was just a really interesting point in time too, because you got to remember, like we were all still in the full throes of COVID at that time too. So I didn't go into the CBS studios. I went into like a little COVID friendly studio, like right here in Atlanta, because I was in Atlanta helping take care of my parents.
So check this out. So to your point about COVID, I was supposed to do that. I was supposed to go into some studio thing, but two things were going on. One, to your point, it was COVID. And then two, I had just had my first daughter and she was a baby. And we were all working from home. So I didn't even have capacity to leave. So they were like, all right, well, we can't send a camera crew. So can you use your cell phone? And so like all the footage for me was just stuff that we recorded on my iPhone.
Wow.
But it just happened to work. It was just such an interesting time. And then, I think in terms of interesting time, especially as we see brands really retract a lot from their commitments around diversity, equity, and inclusion after the murder of George Floyd. Like, it's funny because it felt like you would think that was like a super long time ago. That was only like 2 years ago.
Yeah. It was only 2 years ago. That's what we talked about with seasons, man.
Look, man, let's talk about your journey right now. It's interesting because I'm looking at, some of the brands you've been a part of. And then I've seen you, I've seen you like part of some, I'm not going to name drop the brands or I'll let you do that. But like I see your face, right? Like you outside, like you're genuinely outside. And I'm not calling you old. I'm not. But it's not like, you know what I'm saying? You like just fresh out of college, even though your skin is beautiful.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, I'm serious. I was like, man, I'm going to ask off mic or on mic. I want to get his skin routine because he looks phenomenal. But so what I really want to understand is what led you into this advertising, marketing, PR space? Like what was that? What was the foray for you for that?
Hey man, first off, I feel that hits especially hard as a compliment as a man who's about to turn 46. So I appreciate that. I'll say this. I mean, marketing came to me in a really surprising way. I mean, I had every intention of doing what my grandparents did and what my parents did, which was become an educator. I ended up interning at the Coca-Cola company when I was at Morehouse a million years ago. And I just caught the marketing bug. One of the things that happened to me early on in that time frame was, and I talk about this in my new blog, in my new newsletter that I'm doing for LinkedIn called The Black Guy in Marketing. And I was downstairs sitting in my cube. I was an intern and someone called down and said, "Hey, there's a black guy down in marketing. Can you bring him up here to the conference room?" And it was a company was introducing new creative, and it was creative that was geared towards young African Americans. And I was the young African American in the room. And from that moment on, I started to recognize the things that made me different from many of my peers were an asset and not something that I should shy away from. Now, will I say that I didn't fall into the traps that happen to so many of us early in our careers where we get caught up in the feelings that you have to assimilate? Like assimilation is exhausting, man. Like no matter how many like Patagonia vests that I wore, at the end of the day, one of these things does not look like the other one. And once I got freedom and deliverance from that thought process around assimilation, man, the world just sort of opened up. And I've been trying to give that freedom to professionals and consumers throughout my career.
Well, first of all, we're not going to glaze over that first part you said. Shout out to the 46 and up crowd. You know what I'm saying? Like that's a beautiful thing. Getting older is the goal. You know what I mean?
Hello.
And hello, man. And the thing about it is, like, to your point, you know, I picked that up myself, and we just actually had a conversation with another person just a couple weeks ago about this very thing around just like, you know, code switching being just something that's just exhausting and trying to assimilate or fit in. And here's the thing. Two things about it is, first of all, like you said, I could wear the Patagonia vest and eat grilled mayonnaise sandwiches every day. I'm still black. They still gonna know you black.
Yep,
you're still
absolutely.
black. Okay. So there's no reason, you know, it's you trying to put on something to disguise yourself from yourself. You're not disguising yourself from anybody else.
Yeah.
So that's the first piece. The other thing I find interesting, and I'm sure you've seen this just from as a marketing PR professional, is, you know, the majority, and by majority I mean white folks, like they've been adopting and outright co-opting black vernacular for several decades now. And so it's interesting how sometimes we feel the pressure to put on some degree of whiteness while we see white folks trying to assimilate or adopt or co-opt our culture. So there's two different groups of people, neither one of them really being honest about who they are. And at a certain point, it's just like, man, like to what end? Like, what am I doing this for? So I hear you. I think for me, it was probably 2016, I think, Drew, is when I finally said, you know what, man, like I am who I am.
Yeah.
Who I'm not, I can never be. Because it's exhausting enough just adulting. I ain't trying to put on a whole nother persona, to work with y'all. And if you don't like it, you don't like it. And if you do, you do. Like, whatever. I'm not worried about it. Okay. So now let's keep going now, because, I love the idea of what you said about, you know, that the freedom and the weight that's been lifted off of you. You're seeking to help, really help to free and liberate others. That's a beautiful thing. And I think that's why I've been so excited, and I'm so thankful that you're here on Living Corporate, because that's what we do. We center and amplify Black and brown folks at work. You've worked with some huge brands, honestly, brands that I don't really think I understand. Like, okay, how does a human being work there? Like, you worked at Nielsen as an example.
Yeah.
I'm curious, like, what would you say was like the most unique experience, and then which was probably like the most humbling experience?
I would say probably the most unique experience would have to be when I was at Nielsen. Our EVP of marketing and communications had said, hey, I'm probably going to leave and go work on one of the presidential campaigns. They're going to make your boss give her my job. And what I think you should do is, I think you would be great in a great position to take this job. But there's only one thing, and that is that you don't have experience working outside of the United States. And all of the senior leaders in this company have done that. And she was like, there's an opportunity for you to go to Shanghai. We have a situation there where the business has outgrown the communications talent on the ground. And I need someone to go there, reorg the communications function, do the function, and then source, hire, and train their replacement. And then you come back in 18 months. And I was like, you do know that I don't speak Mandarin, right? And she said, yeah. She said, but I think that you're smart enough to figure it out. And she said, and I guarantee you that people will ask you about this time that you spent in China and leading communications outside of the US in one of the fastest growing markets and the fastest growing populations in the world. And she was like, I wouldn't pass up the opportunity. So I packed up my dog, sent him to Mississippi with my mom and dad, and I got on a plane to Shanghai for a year. I would say that's probably and she was right. To this day, it is the first thing that people ask me about on my resume. And I've got some good shit on my resume, right? But people ask me about that all the time. I will say, man, for me, the most humbling experience that I've had in my career is not humbling in a negative way at all. It's humbling in the respect that I have hired and mentored and trained so many incredible Black marketing and communications professionals, right? And I'm very proud of that. I mean, I'm proud of the fact that they're now VPs and senior directors and they're doing these amazing things. Some of them are off on their own doing their, with their own companies and have these amazing side hustles. And I'm like, yo, whenever I get to the point to where I finally retire, I want y'all to hire me for consulting gigs so I can just come and watch y'all work. You know what I mean? Humbling for me is the fact that I know for a fact that I put a lot of people on, and that's a beautiful thing to me. I mean, I'm very proud of all of the people who have worked for me and that I've mentored, and they're all different. They're all different colors and they're all different races and ethnicities. But the young Black folks that I feel like that I have mentored and sort of shepherded through and into this career and profession, it gives me a lot of joy, man. And it humbles me.
Man, I love that. And there's just, again, it's funny because there's been this theme, this really loud theme that I've been noticing, Drew, across the interviews we've been having, like really all of 2023, is that everyone I've been engaging and we've been able to have dialogues with on Living Corporate, on any of our shows, or like whatever platform or medium that we're producing for that particular moment, there's this sense of shared responsibility, and that our journey is not just for us. And I think that gives me hope, man, because when you talk about liberation, and liberation is broad, like, from individualized liberation to like collective liberation, it can't happen if we're that can't coexist with selfishness. And the idea of sharing platform, or even giving someone a higher platform than you're currently on in the name of just support and love, like that's really what we have to do. And it's so, it's easy, I think, especially like in our cultural context, to think that selfishness and like looking out for yourself or getting yours is some type of ideal, but it just isn't. I'm curious, like as a follow up, have you always felt that sense of need of supporting and lifting as you climb, Or did something happen where you were like, okay, I got mine. Now it's time to help others? Like, what did that look like for you?
Oh man, I mean, that's easy. I just got tired of being alone. I got tired of being the singular voice. I got tired of the people saying, of being the voice of Black people in the room, and because I know that that we're not monolithic, right? I also just had so much help, man. I'm a Black boy from a dirt road in Mississippi. The career.
What part of Mississippi, by the way? What part of Mississippi?
Small town called Sandy Hook, Mississippi. We have more cows than people. If you Google it, Walthall County, Mississippi, it is the cream pitcher of the South. Lots of dairy farms. And listen, the career that I have is not supposed to happen, right? And I know that I've had so many, so much help along the way. There've been so many people who have been strategically placed in my life to be a blessing to me. I mean, I'm a Sunday school kid, so I'm a firm believer that that I am called to be a storyteller. The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is upon me, and I've been anointed to tell good news. Like, I mean, I know that is my gift and my superpower. I know that I'm a storyteller. It's a calling, right? But how I have been able to use those skills and use that talent, and to do so in a way that has been wonderful for me, from a financial standpoint. I've had a pretty good career, but I wanted to be able to also make sure that I'm opening doors for other people and sharing what I learn. I mean, my people perish for lack of information. So if you are in my network, I'm giving you the cheat codes if I know them, right? And so information sharing has always been something that has been a game changer for me. And so I've always wanted to make sure that, I left the breadcrumbs for other people. There's one of the things that was really important to me, particularly when I was working at Nielsen, was I saw what it looked like when people had their perspectives and their value sort of validated with data. And when we would go and say that, that African Americans were one of the most powerful consumer groups, and that they wield this $1.7 trillion of economic power. And when we validated that power, and we validated the cultural and economic impact of communities of color, I saw how people just move differently. They move differently as consumers. I saw it at the personal level. And what I learned in that space is that I can operate in corporate spaces and find ways to use those platforms to empower people who look like me, to give them information, to validate their experiences, right? All of those things are really important to me. And so if you look at the through line of my career, I've been so blessed to work in my purpose and my mission. And that is for me to be able to give information to people who look like me, and to help them at scale, to help them either validate their experience or give them epicenters of power, to validate their epicenters of power. And when I was at Nielsen, it was, when we were talking about, the power of the economic and cultural impact of diverse consumers, I saw that data that we would give away for free to communities of color. It was the same data that every major company was using, but we curated it and shared it in a way that that data was showing up in, presentations when people were trying to get small business loans, in the pitch decks that entrepreneurs were using to pitch their platforms to get additional funding. We saw it in how advertising agencies that were owned by multicultural practitioners were being used to validate what they were saying, right? And so for me, now pivoting to LinkedIn, one of the reasons why when I was being recruited for this job that I absolutely said yes is, think about it like this. This is truly one of the number one reason why I came to work at LinkedIn is African Americans make up about 14% of the U.S. population, right? We make up about 28% of active conversations on Twitter. Imagine what impact it could have if African Americans over-indexed on a platform that was created to connect people to economic opportunity. Every 8 seconds, somebody gets a job on LinkedIn. Imagine if we over-indexed on using a tool, a free tool, where every 8 seconds someone is getting a job, and literally millions of people are learning new skills on the platform every single day. That is about agency. That to me is like, oh, I can come here and decode culture for this company and reintroduce this company and its value to communities where the value of this could help them exponentially. Then sign me up. I'm all in, right? Because if you look at, if you just look at the data, right? Like, we have traditionally been left out of economic opportunity. We tend to be underemployed. Black women have highest labor force participation of any single demographic, but are oftentimes, victims of pay inequities. And so part of what I'm really blessed to get a chance to do is to leverage our platform to talk about how we begin to democratize opportunity. And technology has been a great example of that in every aspect of the economy where Black folks are publicly winning heavily, right? So if you think about what the mixtape did for artists, and they basically cut out the middleman, bypassed the gatekeepers, and used technology to jump over some of those hoops, right? The same thing happened with, you look at like Issa Rae, where she put Awkward Black Girl on YouTube, and then HBO came straight to her, right? And so that's how technology can democratize opportunity. My thinking is that technology can do the exact same thing as it relates to the job market. Let's face it, our labor market is broken. It is incredibly inequitable, right? But think about the fact that what remote work and being able to network remotely or use technology to network, use technology to find jobs, what that looks like, where the rubber meets the road on that is about 56% of African Americans live in the South. Right. And so here's what remote work and access to be able to search for remote work on a platform like LinkedIn does, is that now you can be in Jacksonville, Florida, or Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And if you have the skills, you could get a job in technology and not have to move to Silicon Valley. You can get a job in media and not have to move to New York or Chicago or DC, right? Because of remote, when you couple remote work and you with being able to look for, search for, and find jobs at scale and do it quickly, right? Those are the types of things that I want to bring that level of strategy into spaces where we have not particularly gone in the past.
Man, like I do want to talk about, especially when you talk about career and career management and opportunity and how we're in a unique space. Especially, I feel like, Drew, maybe like a year or two ago, tech has been and was up till, again, like maybe 6-7 months ago, like the place to go. It was like the place where all Black folks were told to, get some basic coding skills, understand some, get your certification, and you need to get into the tech space. At the same time though, like, we're seeing also, again, like we're seeing tech completely change, right? We're seeing layoffs happen, and in large degree, disparately impacting, Black and brown folks, Black and brown women specifically, Black women even more specifically. I do want to understand your perspective as the market continues to shift and change and opportunities continue to shift and change. What trends you're seeing around how folks are using LinkedIn for their personal brand? And then how do you see, usage or the engagement or leveraging of LinkedIn changing over the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah. So listen, I love that you brought up the tech thing, right? And here's what I will say about that is, are we seeing tech layoffs? We absolutely are seeing tech layoffs, but you got to go past the headline and actually read the article on that. And I think that that's like a rule of thumb in decoding anything in economics these days, because there's so much uncertainty in the marketplace. If you have tech skills, just because tech companies are laying off does not mean that those tech skills are not highly transferable to every other industry. So there's other industries where if you have those coding skills, the retail industry will hire you today. The healthcare industry will hire you today. The hospitality industry will hire you today. So the beauty about when you get those skills and you get those certifications is that the market may change, but you and what you bring to bear is highly transferable. And so the thing that I would say that is, to answer the second part of your question of what do I see changing on the platform and what do I see being a game changer in the next 3 to 5 years, I'm going to say the next 18 months is skills, skills, skills. And what I mean by that is the fact that, companies are more and more now using skills as their primary means to source talent. And so that means that job seekers are going to have to start reimagining how they talk about their abilities and how they talk about skills and putting skills first in the way that they talk about it. It's going to be doubly important because this is the last State of the Union was the second time where in the State of the Union, the President of the United States has talked about skills first hiring. And you're going to hear much more about that, right? I think skills first hiring is even more important because it says to employees that you now have much more agency over your career because you can go out and upskill without necessarily having to go to a four-year institution. And so that gives you a little bit more agency over your career. And taking a skills first approach, businesses are doing it more and more. Companies are hiring for skills instead of direct job experience. And we see the pool of talent increase by 9x. That means that when you as a company hire for skills as opposed to simply college degrees, you open up the aperture for way more talent. And the good news for people of color is that it opens up the aperture for way more people of color to enter into spaces where previously you needed a 4-year college degree as a point of entry. And that I think is going to go away. And I think the way that we start to look at how we look for jobs is going to shift and change as well.
We talk about we talk about these different generations and I in terms of millennial, people have been talking about millennials. It feels like people have been talking about millennials longer than millennials been around, but right. It's interesting, Drew, because millennials 40 something now. Like you and I are millennials, right?
I'm Gen X.
We're not.
I'm Gen X.
Hey, yo. I respect you for leaning into the fact that you were Gen X because y'all are not respected. Y'all are not called out enough. But you look millennialish. Again, back to the skin. We will talk about your routine after this call.
Yeah.
Okay. But here's the thing, right? Is to your point, you're Gen X. But like millennials and even some people still talking about younger Gen Xers and people kind of who start the line. But the reality is, man, the Gen Zers are in the building. Like they outside, they're graduating from college, they're entering into the workforce. I'm curious, what have you noticed about how Gen Zers engage LinkedIn? And then what advice would you give for them in terms of just building their brand on and off LinkedIn platform?
Oh man, I love this question. And here's one of the things that I think that we lose sight of when we talk about millennials and when we talk about Gen Z is everybody gets super excited about talking about those demographics. But what companies have to recognize and understand is that 44% of millennials are people of color, 48% of Gen Z are people of color. And by 2026, it's estimated that Gen Z will be minority majority, right? And so if you don't have a inclusive or multicultural strategy on how you think about staffing, how you think about talent, how you think about marketing, if you're a marketer, then you don't have a growth strategy. This is not So you have to now prioritize and speak to communities of color with a level of specificity that was optional, maybe, previously, but it's table stakes now. And here's the deal about Gen Z is, I'm Gen X. We've talked about that. I made most of my sort of purchase decisions based on value. How much bang for the buck can I get? Am I going to get 16 ounces instead of 12 ounces? Right. And I got that mostly from my parents' generation. And I've made a lot of my career decisions in that very same vein. Okay, I'm getting paid on the 1st and the 15th, carry the 1. How much is my check going to be after taxes? Okay, that's where I'm going. Right. And what I will say about these younger generations, bro, is they're not making their purchase or their workplace decisions based solely on value. They are making it based on values and how companies show up in the world, what those companies stand for. All of those things are a part of the decision-making process for younger professionals. And as the labor market tightens, and there will be ebbs and flows, of course, but we are still in a generationally low unemployment market, despite what we are seeing on headlines about certain industries laying off. Keep in mind, tech is less than 5% of the labor market. There's still a lot of people trying to get people in the door and hire people right now on, LinkedIn. There's a job opening for every single job seeker on our platform right now. And so what I think about Gen Z is they are making those decisions based on their personal values. They're bringing their values into work. They're bringing everything from their authenticity, and they're bringing, their allegiance, their political allegiances into how they make those decisions. And so a lot of these folks really want companies to be on the right side of history. And I think that that's a new religion for a lot of organizations because employees just have more voice and more choice than they've ever had before. And so one of the things that I think that will happen as, companies like us try to figure out how to make the labor market more equitable is that we're going to see more and more employers having to be much more concerned about the health and the happiness of their employees and not just their productivity. Largely led by Gen Z demands.
Man, I love that. And here's the thing, right? When it comes to what I love about, I think in every generation, it's funny because every older generation can look at the next generation and say this. It's almost like we get, sometimes we get we have selective memory with this, but it applied from boomers to Gen X. It applied from Gen X to millennials, and now it applies from millennials to Gen Z. I just love the fact that Gen Zers are like, yo, we're not going to stand for this. We're not vibing. Mm-hmm. It is what it is. And they'll leave, right? They'll make their voice heard with their feet, right? They'll find another job. And what I also think is interesting is because it's a combination of, the profile of Gen Zers, but also just the way that technology is and the way algorithms set up. It's easier now in some ways. Again, it's probably a separate podcast, but to build a brand and get a following, right? So
oh yeah,
right. So you piss off some 24-year-old or some 22-year-old, they gonna leave and they gonna let they 40,000 followers on TikTok know about it.
Absolutely.
Right. So now you got a digital billboard running around telling everybody not to work at Redacted. You know what I'm saying? So that's it's very interesting to me. Look, you didn't say it, so I'm gonna give you your flowers right here. I saw the pictures and stuff of you on the Nike billboard and super fire. And
thank you, sir.
And look,
thank you.
You're absolutely welcome. You're talking about the Be True this Be True campaign, and this was last summer. I'm curious, what projects are you driving these days, and what's exciting for you as you look at the rest of this year?
Yeah, man. I will say this is that, and thank you for the shout out around Nike. I feel like that what I do around trying to advance equity and trying to evangelize reciprocity between the relationships between consumers and companies and between employees and the companies that they work for is absolutely what I do at LinkedIn, but it's also what I do outside of LinkedIn too. And shout out to Nike for recognizing me for that. And, it's not often that that a 46-year-old gets a brand ambassador nod and an ad campaign from Nike. But what I will say around that is that roles change, but missions don't. I mean, and I think that is something that just sort of, kind of carries me, because there's so many things that we do at work, but there's so many things that we do outside of work that are about our passions, that we're trying to accomplish a mission. One of the things that we're talking about, things that I'm excited about, man, I can't tell you how excited I am about the work that LinkedIn is doing in partnership with Dove. Just came off I'm still riding on the high from it, but we partnered with Dove in their crusade to end race-based hair discrimination and end race-based hair discrimination primarily in the lives of Black women. And we signed on. Dove has done an amazing job over the course of the last few years in helping to change legislation in 20 states to make it illegal to discriminate against people for them wearing their natural hair at work and at school. It's still amazing that there's still a ton of states where it is absolutely legal to discriminate against people for how their hair naturally grows out of their head. What we know for a fact is that our brand had the opportunity to influence change and behavior shifts at work, and that's where we wanted to really focus our efforts. So we partnered to train and educate 1 million what we call workplace professionals. A lot of people call them workplace gatekeepers, the folks who work in human resources and hiring managers, to train them on equitable business practices so that we can start to get at the root of the behaviors and changing people's minds, right? And I think that it's interesting because Dove is going to change the laws and we're going to try and change the behaviors while that's taking place. We're also signing on to have the conversation on platform about Black hair is professional. And man, you should see the conversations that sisters are having around their hair journey. It was really important for me and the team that I work with that we didn't want to ask Black women to share their trauma. Right. We wanted to ask them to share their journey. Right. I did not want trauma porn around horrible experiences just to be flooding the platform. I wanted to make space for the journey that many Black women feel like is an evolution and a joyful journey as they got to, maybe there are definitely some aspects of that hair journey that have been harsh and upsetting and just flat out wrong and racist and evil. But I think that I wanted us to make sure that we also made space for the examples for younger folks to see where the evolution became for women who found acceptance and who found joy in their journey and in their evolution for how they felt about their hair journeys. Right. And so the way that women and a lot of men too are showing up on platform to talk about Black hair is Black hair is professional is just one of those things that I'm super excited about. I think about what hashtag Black hair is professional not only means for Black professionals in the United States, but we're a global brand. I think about the fact that 56% of the population in Brazil is Black. People don't talk about that. I think about what hashtag Black hair is professional can mean for the entire diaspora, right? Where we start to normalize the conversation and start to take hair off the table of consideration and at work for people of color. I'm super excited about that and what it means for us as a brand and how we use the brand to engage Black professionals. I mean, there's still a lot that we have to do to make sure that our open for business sign for professionals of color and Black professionals and queer professionals has always been on, but we are now actively doing things to make sure that our welcome mat is out for them with a level of specificity that we quite honestly have never had before. And I'm super proud of that.
Man, I love that framing, right? The light's been on, but the welcome mat is out. Look, we didn't get to it this time, and I told you I was going to honor your time, but I want to say a couple of things. First of all, it was an honor and a pleasure to have you on the show. Two, we've been talking around it people of color, women of color. As we just look at the landscape right now, I think it's imperative to say, especially as we wrap up, we're just coming out of Black History Month, that, all Black lives matter. This is not, queer Black people are also people. I bring this up because, it's on my heart to share and say, not only looking at, I follow your content, Drew, to be very clear. I follow your content, but also just as like this overwhelming thing when it comes to just the work that we do. And as we think about these different communities and really being intersectional, and we're talking about like these different demographics and populations, so often I think that we being like Black and brown people, but certainly just not everybody, because I'm not going to be monolithic in that regard, but we erase one another when we don't acknowledge and welcome the fact that we all show up and we're all different, but we all still are a part of that a shared diaspora. And like, I really want to have you back to talk about the intersection of identity, and talk about ways that frankly, straight Black men can show up and be better allies across the board, especially in the workplace, especially in contexts like this where your job security feels less and less secure every day. And so anyway, look, I just want to tell you, I see you. You are loved. You are appreciated. It's been an honor. It's been a pleasure. You're welcome to come back again. I was hitting you up before your people hit me. Okay. So like, let's not. All right. So let's.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that so much, man. Hey, let me just also say to you, I appreciate what you do, man. I listen to the interviews that you have, and bruh, fire. The questions that you are asking people and the interviews that you get are just amazing, man. And what I will say is that faith comes by hearing, and so many of the stories that you're making available to people so that people can hear, I honestly believe gives so many people that sort of, it reframes their opportunity index, right? Like they say, oh, their possibility, model is like, oh, that is possible. That's a sister who looks like me. That's a brother from the South too. Like that person is in this space. That person is a queer person operating at that level. That person, all of those stories really, really matter. And I'm not just saying that from a storyteller. I'm saying that from a person who I know that seeing other people's stories and their journeys was pivotal for me and mine, that I was able to see that that's possible. So I want to say, thank you for that. Also, like, thank you for talking about the intersectionality piece of it. Like that part is very near and dear to me. And so I just appreciate your time, bro.
Oh man, I appreciate you. Look, friend of the show, welcome back anytime. We will talk to you soon. Peace, man. Yo, I want to thank Drew again. Thank you for the time. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for just all the work that you've done and are doing to advance and support people that look like you and people that don't. One thing I didn't have time to really get into like I wanted to, but I'm going to say it here is, and I'm going to reiterate it here, is that, when we talk about Black and brown experiences, and we talk about historically marginalized experiences, those experiences include queer folks and disabled folks. It's very easy to erase and or otherwise seek to marginalize or minimize the experiences and identities of people that sit at those intersections. But when we talk about work, we talk about career, we talk about micro and macroaggressions, those identities matter. The intersection of those identities matter. Of course, we're talking about women who are Black and brown too. We're talking about everybody. Right? We cannot be liberated. We cannot be free if we put gates around who within our oppressed groups fit or don't. It is, it's evil. It's counterproductive. It's restrictive. We're not moving anything forward. So, much love to everybody. Make sure you're taking care of yourselves and each other. And it's been Zach Living Corporate. Love y'all. Peace.
Elevation. Post-production is handled by Jeremy Jackson. Got a topic suggestion? Email us at livingcorporatepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us online on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and living-corporate.com. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned.